Told that all vegetables are good for you. That is bullshit. I'm gonna show you 5 vegetables that I strongly believe are hurting you. Spinach. Popeye was full of shit. This doesn't make you strong, it just fills you with oxalates, dicarboxylic acids that cause kidney stones, that cause joint pain, and that can even lead to kidney failure.
Welcome to Influence to Death, your guide for navigating the wild world of wellness influencing. Okay, welcome to our second episode of Influence to Death. I am Victoria Lafont.
I'm Hannah Wright.
And today we are going to talk about the carnivore diet.
Yes, I'm very excited about this. I have been fascinated about carnivore since I first heard about it like 10 years ago. And that was when it was fringe then.
Wow.
And I was like, how are people doing this? Why don't they have scurvy? How are they living? How is this working? Just like so many questions.
The scurvy question, it's a very legitimate question that we will touch on today.
Awesome.
Yeah. It's a good point because humans are not a mammal that can create their own vitamin C. We have to eat vitamin C, essentially. It's essential for us. And so meat only has vitamin C when it's raw. And then even then in
small amounts, right?
Yeah. But yeah, we'll touch on that today. And then where people can find us.
Yes. Okay. So if y'all want to find us, you can get a hold of us at influencetodeath@gmail.com and on Instagram at influencetodeath and on Substack at influencetodeath. And of course, you can always email us with any questions, or if y'all have any episode ideas or topics you want to see us cover, please don't hesitate to send those our way.
Yeah, I'm curious what other people are seeing in pop nutrition, pop wellness. I don't know if I mentioned this on the last episode, but I just learned about the slow food movement. Or no, I'm sorry, slow carb. Yeah.
What is that?
Slow food was like a big deal. That's a different
Well, the slow food I know. Is slow carb like you eat carbs, savor each bite slowly, or what is that?
That's a great guess. I have no idea. Anyway, okay, so today, we're going to cover the carnivore diet and we're going to run it through our 4-question format. So we're going to start with the history, and then Hannah and I are going to talk to you about the bias that we have in the context of carnivore, the evidence. There's a lot to talk about there, and then the takeaway, like, is it worth it? And this might be a 2-parter. So we're just
a meaty subject.
Okay.
That's probably the only joke I'll ever make. Sorry. It just came into my head and I had to say
that was amazing. We are a comedy podcast, I think.
Now we are. Okay, I'm going to stop talking and you tell us about the history of carnivore.
Wow, I have to pull it together after that one. So we got a lot of information, and actually as we were compiling information, I couldn't believe how much there was out there about this. So let's start. Just the definition. A carnivore or it's a meat eater. So it's an animal or plant whose food and energy requirements are met by the consumption of animal tissues, whether through hunting or scavenging. And actually, when I was looking it up, I was like, oh, right. They're carnivorous plants, which is amazing. So plants that they don't just get their energy from the sun, and even I remember studying herbalism in Northern California. There are multiple carnivorous plants that are shade-loving, that eat flies and little...
Like the Venus flytrap, right?
Yeah.
But there's probably more than that.
Dude, there's these little like pot-shaped plants, and then the insect or the worm just like lands in there, and there's some like really like attractive goo. Yeah, and it just dissolves it. And like... So anyway, so plants can be carnivores, which is the weirdest twist of the whole episode. The history of this is pretty fascinating. Definitely like the earliest known people who were carnivorous were Inuit people or traditional people who just did not have access to plant foods. They lived on what they had access to. And that's actually a point that I want to make that's going to come up a few times in this episode, which is humans are omnivorous. Unless you talk to Wiley Brooks, who we featured on the last episode, and he believes that humans are breathnivorous. I don't even know how he would say it. But we have the setup to eat whatever we have available to us. And there's really good evidence, that highly established evolutionary biologists and anthropologists have studied and presented as research, that we ate whatever was around. And the reason why is because we have these enormous calorie hungry brains that developed that needed whatever calories we could get. So that's always, I'm skipping ahead, that's kind of my stance, but I think that that's just an important foundation to lay, is that, Inuit people ate animal foods because that is what was there. They also did eat some lichen when it was available to them. So they weren't 100% carnivorous. They were opportunists, right? We were omnivores. But secondary to that, we first see the carnivore diet come into more Western culture. This man named Dr. John Rollo in 1797.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah. So even before the 1800s, there's record of this. He successfully treated 2 patients with diabetes with a diet consisting only of meat and fat. And there's a link there to read more about it. That is the earliest recorded evidence that I could find of people using meat and fat therapeutically. But then actually there's this website with the best name ever, meattrition.com. I was like, good job. That's a great URL. On that site, I learned about this book, The Philosophy of the Stomach, or An Exclusively Animal Diet is the Most Wholesome and Fit for Man by Bernard Moncriff. And that was published in 1856 in London. And actually, they have a photo of the cover of the book and some of the illustrations that he used in the book. So a quote from the book. It's so cool. Yeah. So we'll put that in the show notes. It's really neat. His kind of idea is that because meat and fat were so nutrient dense that we needed less of those foods to thrive, and that actually it like shrunk the size of some of our organs. And so he has diagrams showing this, like how like the organs kind of shrink in relation to the amount, like the quantity of food that's going in. We don't need as much like digestive strength to digest these foods. Yeah. I mean, what do you think about
and
that?
That's kind of,
yeah.
So like thinking about, something like, I don't know, my mind goes to the GAPS diet, the gut and psychology syndrome diet, even though I don't know how officially recognized that is. There's not really a lot of hard, like big science to back it up, but it works for a lot of people. And that's the premise of that, is that, starting with things like meat stock, avoiding like lots of raw vegetables, having things like butter or animal fats like lard or tallow, they're the easiest to digest and they help if you're struggling with any kind of digestive system issues, that can like help that heal. So then you can go on to having more fibrous plant foods. I think that's super interesting. I've seen both, like working with people. We don't have to go into that now. And I would love to hear what you've seen too, where some people seem to have a really hard time digesting fibrous plant foods, but meat and animal fats, it's a lot easier for them. But then you see people with like inflammatory bowel disease who can't tolerate red meat or large quantities of meat. So anyways, I'm not going to go into that right now, but I think it's interesting that back in the 17 or 1800s, they were observing this, that meat could be really healing. Yeah. And you don't need to work as hard to digest it.
That was a big take that he had. Yeah, he wrote, actually, I have not felt the slightest disagreeableness arising from the bowels, either in the shape of eructations from the stomach, or obstruction or dysentery, or any denomination.
Denomination?
Yeah, it's some old timey writing. Yeah, it's really interesting to see these diagrams that he drew of like what he believed was happening internally to the organs. So yeah, I mean, and I didn't even think about the GAPS diet. Hannah, until you said it just then. But yeah, the beginning stages of that diet. And it's mainly recommended for people on the autism spectrum, ADD, ADHD, dyslexia, dyspraxia. I think that was like her original use of that diet.
But it can be used for all kinds of stuff, especially even digestive disorders and inflammatory, like gut problems too. And it's the same kind of idea.
So I'm just going to give you an aside clinically, because it is so similar, right? That's like what people start with when they start that diet. It's a pretty extreme elimination, just down to meat broth. Years ago, I went to the Ancestral Health Symposium, Ancestral Health Summit, AHS, in Berkeley. And at the time, we had just created this protein powder. I don't know if you know that or not.
Yeah, I remember your protein powder company.
Yeah, so God, it was just like such a jumping off a cliff into the unknown. Yeah, we started this protein powder company. We would literally mix it by hand in a certified kitchen with like the hair nuts. We looked like Laverne and Shirley. And I would come home at night and blow like pure protein powder out of my nose. But that protein powder was based on liver and collagen as the proteins. It was raw liver powder and collagen.
Oh, that sounds amazing. I wish that was still around to buy.
You could just make it. Actually, we sold the company to people and then they didn't carry on. She actually went and got her graduate degree and they like moved to the East Coast. They didn't keep going. But anyway, we made it because we wanted to offer people a really like, I don't know how to say it, but like allergen free or elimination friendly protein powder. But at this Ancestral Health Summit that I went to, we have to look up the woman's name. She started a website called unblindmymind.org. I would assume she's still around. She was, I wanted to say, a PhD biochemist. Her daughter had autism, and she truly believed that what triggered her daughter to have most of the problems that she was having was a sensitivity to glutamine. So collagen, in her eyes, was this free source of glutamine and was like horrible.
Yeah.
Right? Anyway, I met with her at this summit. It's like we had like a mutual friend. I think she did a TED talk with this woman who is a speech coach, and that I taught that lady Pilates. So we like had a mutual friend. So we just like met in Berkeley for dinner. She wasn't there for the summit, but she was like, I have no idea like why you think this protein powder is so good for people who need to be on elimination, because these were my findings, and I just remember this, like, it was one of those first moments where I was like, whoa, all of, these teachings that I believe, all this information might not be as set in stone as I think. It was like a pivotal moment. Anyway, to your point, some people would do really, really well on GAPS and collagen and all these foods. And to her, same, broth was like, totally.
Oh yeah, because it's high in histamine and glutamate. And I mean, all of those things can be, if someone, this is like way beyond my depth of knowledge, but when you get into like the genetic predispositions to be able to tolerate more of certain nutrients or need more of certain nutrients.
Yeah.
Like Chris Masterjohn talks about this kind of stuff a lot with like specific nutrients and how it can really affect somebody like in a bad way, like the super healing food that we think we need so much of. I've heard people talk about that with liver supplements too, is that taking too much of it can make them feel really awful, or taking too much collagen can make them feel really bad.
Yeah.
So
yeah, she was very clear that her daughter and many, she worked with patients, they had terrible side effects from that. So to your point, and I know we mentioned this on the last episode, this is not black and white. There's like, although I keep coming back to like, I am 99.9% sure we all have to eat food and drink water. In the realm of when you finally get there, what people do well with is very different person to person. It is not straightforward. So anyway, these guys though were having great success with just meat and water. And this guy, Bernard Moncriff, that wrote this book, he was a huge believer in this exclusively animal diet. So we start to see like, okay, 1700s, the 1800s. Then by the 1930s, there was a study published called Prolonged Meat Diets with a Study of Kidney Function and Ketosis. 2 normal men volunteered to live solely on meat for 1 year. And this is actually, again, I have links for all of these. If people want more information, they can check these out. This study was inspired by one of the participants had been on an expedition to live with ancestral people, Inuit people. And so they were kind of inspired by what they saw there. And then they wanted to sort of run this experiment at home to see, they could come up with. This is really interesting to your point about scurvy. So scurvy was not present in the native population, but when it occurred in the scientists that were there working to learn more, study the native population. And then they cured it. They write in this paper that they cured it by eating raw meat.
Oh, so maybe were they up there with them and the community's eating raw meat and the scientists are like, I'm not eating raw meat. Maybe. And then eventually they developed scurvy and the people there were like, you need to eat this raw meat.
Yeah. Tie-in with the protein powder, when we got the nutritional testing on that stuff, we paid a little extra to get a full micronutrient panel. And it was crazy high in vitamin C. Now, we had some botanicals, we had elderberry, which is high in vitamin C. That might have been the only botanical we had that would have had a C profile, but the basis was raw liver, and I often wondered how much percentage of that vitamin C count was from the raw liver. And then when I was like, wow, there's this interesting tie-in. And then you're saying, were native people's genetics different? Maybe they weren't as predisposed to scurvy, as these guys that were up there studying them. So the study was pretty interesting. So some of the findings, it was 2 guys, right? So it was N=2. It wasn't 2,000 people doing this controlled diet. But one of the guys had gingivitis that disappeared after the raw meat diet. Another finding is that the acidity of their urine increased 2 to 3 times that of the acidity on a mixed food diet. And acetonuria was present when they were eating exclusively meat. And that's actually a point that I think we should discuss when we talk about the takeaways. Is it worth it? This is a really interesting part of research that actually the people most familiar with it are acute care doctors, ER docs and that, which is our acid-base balance. There is a movement, and Hannah, this would be cool to have an episode on. Our list just gets longer and longer. Can our acid-base balance be influenced by diet? For years, it was kind of thought that it couldn't because our body is so it
keeps a tight rein on it. It has to, otherwise it's not good.
We'll die. Yeah, our blood has to stay at a very specific pH. So we thought, well, how much would diet really matter? And I think I've actually told you this for one of our clients who I respect working for him a lot. He's curious. He's looking at a lot of different angles of wellness. Asked me to research this. And I started with the bias of this is horseshit. No, diet cannot affect acid-base balance. That was the idea that I started with. And by the end of researching for him, I was I was totally wrong. I think that it can, and it can affect our health. So it was interesting just to see that in this study, they did monitor acidity.
And so their bodies were becoming more acidic. Their blood was more acidic.
Their urine was. And there's actually this starts to get beyond my wheelhouse, but I think it's beyond a lot of people's wheelhouses. We don't have a great way, based on what I know and the research I've read, to suss out the how strongly connected the acidity of the urine is to the pH of the blood.
Right.
We used to think, oh, they're connected, but then we're we're not really sure how much they're connected. Ultimately, what we do know is that the body will go to great lengths to keep the blood at 7.35 to 7.45 on the pH scale, because that is pure. It's incredibly interesting biochemistry. That is how our enzymes work, is at that pH. That is how our DNA works at that pH. It's very, very cool. So our body will do backflips to keep it there.
Yeah, even in your gut, it's supposed to remain a certain pH. That's why I usually tell people not to drink copious amounts of alkaline water, because
and then
it can
our stomach
throw that
pH
off.
is different than our colon pH. Like colon needs to be acidic.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess the stomach does too. Anyway, so the other finding that they reported is that the meat diet contained less calcium, but the study didn't report a deficiency. I'm not sure if they tested for deficiency, but that's something that comes up, as I was looking at the evidence, is that people who eat the carnivore diet are recommended to take a calcium supplement.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I'm like amazed that it's like, I'm like, are they making broth? And like, couldn't they leach calcium out of bones or like bones from like tinned fish?
Or are they or something using the calcium up with that nutrient imbalance or something? And I wonder if in that study, even though it said they didn't have a deficiency, I mean, how long can you go pulling calcium from your bones to normalize your calcium levels? And then maybe you're just your bones are becoming weaker, right?
Totally. There's so many questions, like what happened to their teeth, I wonder.
Right. Yeah. Are they getting cavities or
so cool to see like oral health, and if they could have done like a DEXA scan, like our bone density scan to see if their bone density changed. And it would be cool. I didn't do this before today, but just to see if there's any modern studies that look at, it would have to be at an acid prevalent diet, like an acid forming diet, bone density, how it affects bone density. I want to say it is harmful to our bone density.
Super interesting.
It's pretty cool. So those two guys, like some cool thing, like some positives, some negatives. They were fine though at the end. Like there was actually no follow-up. So, let's say 5 to 10 years out, we have no idea what happened to those guys, but that was in the 1930s. So then it's like, I couldn't really find much in between. There were just some like spotty reports, like here and there, like people recommending all meat diets with hot water. It was called the Salisbury diet, which I kind of wonder, was that like where Salisbury steak came from? I enjoyed that as a kid.
Oh, wow. Lunch. Okay. Yeah.
I loved Salisbury steak with my square pizza. I was an eater though, man. You didn't have to ask me to eat. So, but then fast forward to the mid 2000s, the carnivore diet as we kind of know it today. And, I wasn't aware of it 10 years ago. I'm kind of thinking that 10 years ago, I was just coming off eating a raw carnivore diet, basically. So I'm like, carnivore diet, like I said, was probably not a thing to me. I was like, eat it raw, baby. But the guy who really brought this back was this orthopedic surgeon, Dr. Sean Baker, and he's totally still around. He
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so I didn't know about him before this. What do you know about him?
I just know him from social media.
Okay.
I think I stopped following him a while back, but he was always popping up, I guess, because of shared interests. And I was like, oh, this guy's interesting.
Yeah, he is yoked. So bro is cut. And that is actually, there's like this thread of commonality that I just want to point out that I saw as I was looking at these people that are kind of the most well-known influencers in this space. They're all like, I'm like seeing them with their shirt off and their muscles are bulging. And
that's like the selling point, right?
I think it is a selling point. Anyway, we're going to kind of talk about that, as we go through these guys. So, but he's the one who brought it back. His website is it's kind of sweet. Like it's low key. Like his tagline on his website is surgeon, author, athlete, father. And I was like, oh, there's like some sweetness there. And you can tell he's like proud of his accomplishments. He's proud of his body. This is obviously in some way worked well for him. He calls himself the Carnivore King on YouTube. And again, like you're just going to start to see this thread come.
Isn't he the same one who also, I've had people, I think, send me his videos to ask about it. And it's usually the ones of him eating testicles.
Okay, that's
like raw testicles, or is that somebody else?
That's somebody else. So let's talk about him next. So that's the Liver King, Brian Johnson.
Okay.
Probably. I mean, Sean Baker might eat testicles.
He might. I feel like he does, but
the Liver King, like for sure, I've seen him eat a testicle like an apple. So he started as Brian Johnson. didn't gain much traction, but then he switched over to becoming the Liver King. There's a whole controversy that has blown up with him in the past year because he swore up and down, left and right for years that he was not using testosterone. You know, my husband, who is also a yoked donut eater, right? Definitely not carnivore.
And that's not slang for anything. He just likes donuts, right?
Like, I think if he had to pick between me and donuts, it would be a hard choice for that man. So he, though, has been around, you know, he's a college football player. He's been around athletes and he's been a serious athlete his whole life. He like takes one look at the Liver King one day, you know, I've been pulled up on Instagram. And in my experience of eating the primal diet, we would have these guys come and live with us in Hawaii. They would be eating maybe even like good middle of the road whole foods, but they would get there and they would be in the sun and working and eating primal, and they would just get these huge muscles and yeah, totally cut. And so I was like, well, maybe. And Andrew was like, that guy is juicing 1,000%. That's
what my husband said too. He like looked at him. He was like, no, that's. And I mean, really, he's like pushing, like he pushes. I feel bad. I'm not trying to talk bad about poor Brian Johnson, but like he pushes that limit of like I'm like, that just looks slightly unnatural. You know, in my eyes, it's a lot.
He even makes Sean Baker look like not as muscly. It turns out though that somebody got emails that leaked, and the Liver King was using steroids. He published a whole apology video. Anyway, so he though is like very much kind of on the carnivore side of things, and a lot of people really like. I don't want to just say bought in, but I think he was inspiring. I mean, you know, like I looked at the crazy weights he lifted and what he was doing, and he's like living out on land. And I mean, it's a little gimmicky, but I was like, go hard, bro. You know, good for you.
And he has his whole family on it too, right?
The Liver
like
Queen.
His wife, the Liver Queen, their kids, the Liver kids. Yes.
Yeah.
And I mean, they're probably all very healthy kids, you know, like they're getting tons of nutrients.
Yes.
They're playing outside all day. Like that's great.
Totally. Yeah, absolutely. I was kind of like, man, why didn't you just say like I'm using steroids? To me, and you know, I've been like now steeped heavily in this whole like weightlifter. There's like a different culture that is not wellness culture for weightlifters. That is this most like accepting, body positive, beautiful, transparent world. And some of those guys are like, yeah, I'm juiced to the gills. And it's like, okay, you are. That was not his approach, though, to this. He kept it very secret. The kind of the like hidden part, at least to this, I didn't know this. He owns a supplement company called Heart and Soil Supplement Company with another person who is, who to me was the most well-known carnivore advocate, Paul Saladino.
The guy who thinks all plants are bullshit. Is that Paul Saladino?
And I'm leaving the best for last. And, you know, okay, so, and we said this is true. Look, I'm not out to get these guys at all. I'm just going to go ahead and say it. I do have a pretty strong bias against the way that Paul Saladino presented his views. Sean Baker and the Liver King, even the Liver King, I'm like, cool, this is something that you obviously are passionate about. Sean Baker, I really feel like that. He's just like seems fairly balanced in what I've seen of him. But yeah, the Liver King owns this company with Paul Saladino, who did not have, in my opinion, a balanced presentation of the carnivore diet. And so on their website, I actually took a screenshot we'll put in the show notes. The supplement that really stood out is called Whole Package. It's for men. I'll let you guess what's in it. This is the guy that would eat testicles like an apple. And there's actually like blood extract in the supplement, different blood components like red blood cells, platelets. Anyway.
Interesting.
And testicles. So that's Whole Package. And then they have one for women called Her Package.
Does that have ovaries in it?
And fallopian tubes.
Okay, so this makes me think of traditional Chinese medicine because glandular supplements are like a part of that medicine, aren't they?
That's a good question that I don't know. We'd have to ask our resident TCM expert, Anna Werdrich. what I thought of is Royal Lee, and what is Royal Lee's supplement company? Standard Process.
Yes. Oh,
that was kind of in my world how I got introduced to supplements. And then I remember for years after becoming, more familiar with research, trying to find research on the benefits of glandulars. And look, here's the thing. I'm not going after these guys for promoting organ meats. Literally have eaten goat brain out of a goat skull that I killed. Okay? Like, I've gone real hard in this direction. That's a true story. But the way that it's presented, I think, again, is the part where it's like, probably there is a benefit. We do have, when we go through the evidence, lots of information from ancestral peoples eating organ meats. We don't have a lot of information backing up that it is like the most optimal thing to do right now.
Right.
But so Brian Johnson and Paul Saladino own this supplement company. They really promote this as being like the best thing that you can do for your health.
How much do these supplements cost for a month's supply? That's what I want to know.
Would you, look that up? I did not look that up. It's a great question. Also, liver is like cents on the dollar. It's like one of the cheapest cuts of meat that you can buy. So I will point out, and I will give credit to Dr. Mike T. Nelson for pointing this out to me. Paul Saladino is the most stringent carnivore influencer that I've come across. And he literally has the word salad in his name.
You love that.
I will never get over that.
How much you love that.
His name is Paul Salad. Dude, it would be like if my name were like, God, I mean, there's nothing that I'm this stringent on. Anyway, I can't even come up with
about $60 for a month's supply,
which is not terrible. I mean, now brand foods used grass-fed. It was grass-fed Argentinian cow liver for their liver that we sourced for our protein powder years ago. We did some pretty hardcore testing of that. It was great quality. Anyway, it was very affordable. So the Liver King and Paul Saladino own this supplement company together, and Paul Saladino is an MD. He's a psychiatrist. But like I said, the way that he promotes the carnivore diet, on his website, he has copy that says, learn which foods are bullshit. And then he's got this whole guide that basically tells you why, like, why plant foods are bullshit. And it doesn't just give you this like easy to understand explanation. It uses some, if I remember correctly, it uses like some more like hard to pronounce, chemical constituents of these plants. And it makes it sound like they're full of these toxins that are hurting you. So that was hard to see. And it's like, again, he's got pictures on his website, like of his shirt off and like that. But to me, that's the thing that's the turnoff is like, promote the thing that you believe in. But like, really? Plants are bullshit?
It's completely unbalanced. And like, as a medical provider, I feel like it is wrong to make statements like that heavily influence someone and they trust you because you went to medical school and you're cherry picking evidence. I mean, even if he's looking at it, it seems like he's formed his own opinion and he's like, this is the way. And you have to wonder, does he really feel that way? Or does he want to sell his supplements? Like, that's the problem that I run into is like, I don't know if I can trust this person because they want to sell this, they want to put you on a membership for $60 a month, a recurring payment for this penis supplement. And like, they want you to keep buying it. So of course he's going to say all plants are bullshit. Don't eat plants. Not to mention like eating a meat only diet for most people is very expensive.
And that's brought up in criticisms of the carnivore diet is for most people, it is cost prohibitive. Mm-hmm. I'm never going to stop thinking about you saying that it's a penis supplement. It's true. So those are kind of the most well-known current influencers. There is the lion diet where only beef is eaten. Jordan Peterson and Michaela Peterson, his daughter, have gotten really well known for that. I mean, he's well known for all kinds of things, but especially for that. And what I will say is when I read the information, when I watch videos, I mean, I've steeped myself in this pretty heavily over the past couple weeks. There's a lot of straw manning that happens. So meaning people, you know, might say like, are you sure this is a good idea? Are you sure this is safe? And like that. And in the videos or in the information, the people who promote the carnivore diet or the lion diet will say like, people ate meat for hundreds of thousands of years. And it's like, yes, they did. That is not the question. That's a straw man. That's a different question. Or there's been all this research done on a ketogenic diet. Yes, there has. Carnivore diet is not innately ketogenic. To me,
no, it's like, completely different, right? I mean,
yeah, but like they conflate those diets in a lot of what's written, a lot of what's said. So there is a lot of conflation, of straw manning, of like people asking one question and then, you know, the responder, you know, whether it's in a text or, you know, on a podcast or YouTube video, answering or responding to kind of a different point. I noticed that a lot. And then one thing, this is current history, but I think it's interesting. There was this connection, like I said, this thread that kept showing up between this diet and like manliness and like beefy. You said it was a meaty episode. You're right. Free thinking, revolutionary. Like on Sean Baker's website, he wrote that he's a revolutionist. He used that term. And I was like, huh, like on his homepage, like I don't even know what that means, like a revolutionist. Right. And then on the homepage of the Heart and Soil Supplement Company, they are starting to advertise Pure American Liver. And it's the video of it. It's like a cowboy swinging a lasso over his head.
Oh, okay.
You know, or like these guys have their shirts off.
It's marketing. They're trying to hit a target audience, right? I mean, is that what's happening? And is that what we were talking about? The trad lifestyle?
That might have been what came up because I was like I held myself back, but I was going to comment, trad wife me daddy. Not sure that any man would want to trad wife me, but yeah, it's like a thing that comes up. Although in the studies that we're going to look at, there are not many studies, but there are women, lots and lots and lots of women who are drawn to and have found benefit from this diet. So, but yeah, it's a huge angle. And there was an article written in the New Yorker in 2023 by Manveer Singh titled "Redshift is an all-meat diet, what nature intended." And he brought this point up, or she, I'm actually not sure the gender of this person, quoting a guy on X whose username is Raw Egg Nationalist. So I looked this guy up. He now has over 200,000 followers on X, which was previously Twitter. And he basically talks about globalism through the context of soy. So soy globalism and how a low-fat vegetarian diet tanks testosterone. And he really like pushes the like, if you want to be a man, you need a powerful, there's this whole thing. So,
I mean, I've heard that argument for so long, especially with soy and men. Yeah. Like, it's going to make you grow boobs and it's going to make you cry and you're going to, you know, become more feminine from eating soy because of the way it affects estrogen. And most of that is complete BS, come to learn. Like, I believed that for a long time because it was so pushed. And then after reading the research, I was like, wait a minute, this isn't exactly true. Yeah.
So, you know, it's interesting to look at it from this, like, okay, from like thousands and thousands of years, Inuit people relying on meat and fat as their main sources of nutrition, into kind of like, you know, the 1700s, like people kind of experimenting with it to see what would happen, but very sparse and for like metabolic issues. Then like to today, where it's kind of like taken a little bit of a different form. Again, I guess the thing that is hard for me is to think about it in evolutionary terms, really like without a dog in the fight. I'm like, I will put a little bit of a dog in the fight with breatharianism. I'm not going to put a huge dog in the fight with a diet. I'm like, experiment with a diet, see how you feel. The part that is hard for me, and I guess this kind of like segues into bias, is I truly believe that once you become any type of authority figure, an MD would absolutely hold the title of an authority figure. I feel like that responsibility, even in my small roles as teacher or, the very few people that I influence, I'm going to be very careful in the information that I present to try and do it in a way that's balanced so that the most benefit is gained. And I feel like when you say that a whole family of nature, a whole food group is bullshit, it's kind of a line for me. I'm like,
that's how I feel too. It's you as a medical provider, you take an oath to do no harm. You are supposed to look at the person as a holistic person and help them, guide them to do the best. What am I trying to say? Just not to influence them in that way.
Yeah.
And so it's wrong. And that is like the ultimate form of influencing that drives me nuts, because it's like, you should know better.
Yeah.
You should know better. You are a trained professional. You have years of education, I guess. Like, I mean, just because you passed medical school doesn't mean you know what you're doing, unfortunately, but you should be out to look out for people. And these people trust you because you're using your expertise to tell them what is good for them and what isn't. And you're cutting out, you're saying all these vegetables and plant foods are bad for you. Like, don't eat them. Don't eat them. Buy my supplement.
Yeah.
It's wrong. It's very just
I agree. It's
shady.
I could feel myself responding to Sean Baker's website a lot differently than I responded to Paul Saladino or even the Liver King. I'm kind of like, and it might have just been because I was around, the Liver King and then hearing Andrew's feedback in my ear for so long, like that guy is obviously on steroids. It was like apparent. With Paul Saladino, it feels a little more like insidious, not insidious. I think those are two different words.
You just made up a new word.
It just feels like a little like creepy, or like he should know better, and he does know better. The other point that I've heard some people make that I think it's actually not a great point is he's a psychiatrist, right? So that's his area of specialty. The reality is that people can become very well versed in a topic that's not their educational specialty. So he theoretically could be really great at nutritional biochemistry and nutritional requirements for people. I just don't think he got there. It's like, I don't think him being a psychiatrist means that he is excused from either knowing or not knowing, as much as he can about nutrition. It's just, it's a basic line of how you speak about this extreme intervention. So,
and where I always wonder, I'm like, does he truly, not just him, but anybody in the same situation, someone with a huge amount of influence, with years of education, who is pushing this very extreme diet and saying everything else is terrible for you. You have to do it this way. I'm like, do you truly believe that? Or are you trying to, psychology, and people like that. They like the extremes. People like controversy. They like things that are like a little bit exciting, because you're going against the grain, and you're telling them actually that broccoli is going to kill you. It's really bad for you. It does all these things with these plant chemicals. And then, it just makes it exciting, because it's completely upending everything that everyone else tells you about nutrition. And so that's a great way to sell your product.
It is.
And like gain a huge audience.
Yeah.
It's not for just the entertainment value. Like, people are just think it's interesting, entertaining to watch. And I wonder, are you following that? Probably he is, but like,
oh, he definitely,
truly in your heart, do you really believe the things you're saying? Or are you just trying to sell yourself? I don't know. There's no way to know that.
No, there's no way. unless he gets emails that are leaked.
Yeah.
Talk about what he really thinks. We will keep you informed about that. Yeah, so I guess that's our bias is, I mean, here's the thing. I actually wrote this down. I was like, to me, this looks incredibly imbalanced, but there are these huge caveats we're going to cover, when we talk about evidence. People have had incredible health improvements with this diet. That's awesome.
Yeah.
It's like, I remember it's the same with GAPS. When I'm a certified GAPS practitioner, I studied with Dr. Camel McBride.
Me too.
Yeah, and I loved studying with her. Although I will say, like, in the years following, I feel like she kind of went to a turn that was really disturbing to me. But I remember learning about the gut microbiome with Dr. Jason Harlach and talking to one of my mentors and being like, God, like, the GAPS diet is so incongruent, with what we're learning about and what the research shows on how to take care of your gut microbiome. And I remember he was like, it doesn't matter if you have a child that the GAPS diet works for and there's some improvement in their state, especially if they have a more debilitating form of autism, forget it. It doesn't matter, so absolutely there are ways where I think a good clinician could help reduce any negative effects. But I think it's going to be really interesting what we look at in the evidence. I mean, there are thousands and thousands of people who report incredible health effects. So,
and I would love to touch on the gut microbiome with carnivore because that's always where my head goes.
Yeah.
But maybe it's not as straightforward as we think it is. I mean, there's still a lot we don't know about the gut microbiome and the populations of microbes and which ones are, we just can observe like what's associated with these health benefits and what isn't. And maybe we don't know everything about it,
Yeah. Oh, I think that's a for sure. Okay. So should we save that for episode 2?
Yeah, let's save it because it looks like there's a lot of really good evidence to dig into.
Okay, Tana, I'll see you the next time. I will see you for part 2 of the
Yes, in part
diet.
2, we'll talk about the evidence and then is it worth it? Is it worthwhile? Should you try carnivore? Who should not try carnivore?
Yeah.
What should you watch out for?
questions.
Okay.
Sweet. I'll see you then.
All right. Bye.
Bye.